We love mountaintop moments, right? We love the great moments in life. We love high school graduations are a great moment in life. Some people peaked out in high school. I talk to people all the time. They're like, man, I wish I could go back to high school. I'm like, there's no way I would go back to high school. You could not pay me enough money to relive those terribly socially awkward years of my life where I was in the deepest valley of my life. In fact, Pastor Jimmy here at our Caddo Mills campus, he used to be a physical trainer, and he would have guys come in their 50s and they're overweight and they're wanting to get in shape, and he would ask them, well, what do you bench? And they're like, in high school I bench this. He's like, bro, you haven't been in high school in like decades. Like, we're talking about, what do you bench today? And I say that to say some people, their mountaintop moment was in high school. Or how about, we've been to weddings before, and a wedding is a mountaintop moment, right? And you watch this couple, they come down the aisle and they promise that in sickness and in health and good, better or worse, and good times and bad, like, I'm going to be with you till death do us part. And all the married people sitting out in the audience are going, they have no idea what they're saying right now. Because how many of y'all know you say some stupid stuff when you're in a mountaintop moment, and it doesn't take long to leave the wedding and all of a sudden you're in a valley? Y'all know what I'm talking about? I mean, the honeymoon's not even over, and you realize that commitment for better or worse was more expensive than what you thought. Or how about, how many of you have ever gotten excited and you had a car that you really wanted and you were so excited to get it, and you finally drive off the lot and it is a mountaintop moment. Man, you're so happy. You finally got the new car. You got it. You're driving down the road. You post on Facebook. You leaned up against the car. You're checking Facebook to see how many people liked your post, celebrating that you're in tons of debt. Anyways, and sorry, that was free. And you're like, this is so great, until 3 weeks later, you go to start the car and it won't start and you have to have AAA come tow it. You went from mountain to valley real fast. Or how about, how many of you have had kids and you're in the hospital and you hold your little miracle for the first time and you look down and you think, life cannot get better than this. Like, I have never loved a human more than I love you right now. And then you go home and you haven't slept in 48 hours. And that little miracle is crying at 2 o'clock in the morning. You went from mountain to valley really fast. And I'll say this, the funny thing about valleys is you never get warning when you're about to go into one. You're just going through life, you're just doing life, and everything's good, and then all of a sudden you're in a valley. And I just am here to declare, maybe some of you aren't in a valley season. Maybe you are living your best life, and I love that for you. If you are just thriving, that is wonderful. I will just say, write down today's date and remember this message, because one day you will find yourself in a valley season. And when you do, you're going to need some encouragement to get yourself through that season. See, here, the enemy had been fighting the Israelite people, and they come to them and they say, listen, the reason why you've won all the battles up until this point is because you fought those battles in the mountaintops. But if you came down into the valleys, your God would not be there in the valley. And I will just say that historically, in the culture of this time, that they believed that God's only visited people on the high places. That's why when you read through 1st and 2nd Chronicles, you will see this theme of the good kings and the bad kings. The good kings tear down the altars in the high places, and the bad kings do not. And the reason why they did this is because they did not believe that the gods would come down into the valley. In fact, what makes Christianity different than every other religion is our God doesn't wait for us to come up to where he is. He comes down to where we are. Christianity is the only religion where John chapter 1 writes this. He says, and the word became flesh and dwelt among us. The actual word there is tabernacled among us. He is the God that does not wait for us to ascend to where he is. He doesn't wait for us to have perfection. He doesn't wait for all of our religious boxes to be checked. He is okay to come down in the valley. So we see in John chapter 1 that the Son of God, who was walking on streets of gold, came and breathed his first breath in a manger in a stable. That is God coming down to meet us right where we're at. And I think a lot of times we have that same ideology about God. Although we do not build altars to pagan gods, we do believe that our God only visits us in the high places. That's why when we find ourselves in a valley, we have a propensity to buy into the notion that God has forsaken us, because we begin to think that if God was here, if God was with me, if God was active, then I wouldn't be going through this. And there's a few lies that the enemy tells you whenever you're going through a valley. The first lie he's going to tell you is the victories of your past will not be the victories of your present. He begins to tell you that you peaked out back there, that your God is not going to have a victory in this season. So you live your whole life just replaying old high moments, old great moments without any expectation of what God can do today. The next lie that the enemy begins to tell you is that God isn't the same in the valley. He begins to tell you that it was different back there. Your faith was different back there. It was circumstantial back there, but that God can't move in your situation today. And I'm here to declare to you that the enemy wants to lie to you in your valley season because he knows that God's got another mountaintop moment on the horizon for you. God's got something next that's coming up ahead for you. A few things about valleys. The first thing is that valleys are part of the journey. They're just part of the journey. I think if the American church had a message in a book about valleys, it would be this: the 7 steps to get around valleys. In fact, if we could put it in ways for our spiritual journey to get to our destiny, we would say, take the route that avoids the valley. But in God, there is no route that avoids the valley. That the way to where God's called you to be is going to be filled with valleys. In fact, God is getting the people, the Israelite people, they just spent 40 years in the wilderness, and he's getting them ready to go in and take the promised land. And he shows up and speaks to them in Deuteronomy 11:11, and he says this: that the land you are about to cross over to is a land that is filled with hills, mountains, and valleys. Meaning that whenever you find yourself in a valley, a lot of times this is what we do. Well, if I had more faith, I wouldn't be in a valley. If God was actually for me, I wouldn't be in this valley. If my confession was better, I wouldn't be in this valley. And I will just say to you that valleys are just part of the journey. You are going to go through hard seasons. The song we sang today, that wind came, rain, the rain came, the wind blew. Like, how can I say this? Going on the journey doesn't exempt you from the valley, but it changes how you go through the valley. And every one of us are going to go through a valley season. The question is, how are you going to go through it? Like, are you going to come out stronger, or is the valley going to defeat you? It's the valley show, come on, because growth happens in the valley. The growth that you're looking for, the maturity that you're looking for, you've been praying to get close to God, and God took you to a valley so you could know him different. You've been praying so you could hear God's voice, and God took you into a valley so he's the only voice that you have. You've been saying, God, I want to know you like a friend. I want you to be the closest friend in my life, and he cuts off every friendship in your life so he's the only friend you have. Maybe the valley isn't the curse. Maybe the valley is the blessing. Winston Churchill says it like this. He says, leaders are inspired by mountaintops, but they grow in the valley. I want to ask you, how are you going to come out of the valley? The valley shows what was in you all along. And God didn't take you to the valley so he could see what was in you. He took you to the valley so you could see what was in you. He already knew what was on the inside of you. He just wants you to see what was already there. So